Afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. I am very happy to be here and to share some thoughts with you. And the previous presenters, and in particular this videotape that just preceded me, I think really set the stage for many of the issues that I want to talk about. Now, I'll apologize in advance. I'm willing to be vulnerable and show my weakness. And my weakness is that I like to talk. And adrenaline makes me run, and there's so many things I want to say that I knew that I needed to do a PowerPoint presentation that would give me some structure. So we're going to have a bit of a chalk talk, but first I'd like to start with, well, an image that eventually I think will come on the screen. Is anybody here who can help me? Mm-hmm. Take a look at this image, because it hopefully brings to mind some of the ideas that I want to contribute to the conversation today. It's a man, and it's about harm, hurt, healing. And I'll get back to that in a minute. But it's also about something that we just heard about, coincidentally. And that is this whole issue of vulnerability and change. Now, you heard I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm a psychotherapist. I do that for work, last 30 years. And one of the things that we do in psychotherapy is help people to get in touch with that hurt, that vulnerability. And it takes courage for people to come into that therapeutic space and allow themselves to open up and allow you to engage with them on this journey, on this process. We all have that within us that will allow us to heal. Don't we? No, you don't sound too sure. If you believe you have within you what it takes to be a better person, stand up. Yeah, let's just do it. I mean, you set the stage for the standing up business earlier, right? Plus, after lunch, it's always good to get the blood back up into the head. So thank you for that affirmation. So it's there. And this intention that I have to try to help people to be better has really influenced the work that I've done with men in the region. So the official title, because we had to have an official title, was Masculinity, Conversations and Conversions on the Road to Gender Equality. Courage was not mentioned specifically, because it has to be there. All intention requires the courage to do something different from what you did before. Now, on this journey, we build on all the work that has been done by the forerunners. And before this, we've talked about our ancestors, our relatives, our co-workers, all these folks who have set the stage. And in the context of working with men, of course, the work was done primarily by women who were courageous enough to challenge the paradigms, the beliefs, the structures, to get gender to become a conversation at the table to which men have lately joined. Now, a very well-known TED Talk by, I think it was Tony Porter, talked about the man box and the need for men to break out of these boxes that we've been placed in by societal requirements, by norms and mores. We want to take that conversation a little further. That's my little graphic of a man. I hope you like it. The head, the torso, the legs, and something that's supposed to look like a penis, although I couldn't really work the graphics so well. Let's not get into a discussion about that. All right? The conversation, folks, is about the change process, not about the crotch. And it is about the fact that the man box requires restructuring. It's not about breaking it, it's about ensuring that it doesn't shackle us. And that as we try to heal it, we heal it in such a way that it benefits all. We don't want scar tissue that holds things together and prevents change. We want a process that allows a structure that allows change. Not shackling, but transformation. So we want to remodel this man box. And the Caribbean Male Action Network, which I co-founded and I'm president and chair of, been around for 6 years, very much under the radar, hopefully not now, today, after this. A community of caring men committed to partnering with women to create a just world where all people achieve their fullest potential. Does it sound good? All right. Can you clap a little louder for all my partners out there who are doing this work? So, how do we get there from here? Because we talk about a process and a journey. Psychotherapy, similar process and journey. Any change that's going to be sustainable must be seen as a journey that requires steps and stages. How do we get there from here? Well, let's start right here with you. You have come to this TED Talk and some of you have been invited, some of you have paid money, but you've made a choice to be in here. You've made a choice to come to be informed, educated, enlightened, challenged, maybe even threatened by some of the ideas that are being shared. Because perhaps you've been comfortable in your conversation, but you're willing to look to perhaps explore new conversations. But you're in the room, and you're part of this conversation, albeit a kind of one-way conversation. Most men aren't even in the room for gender conversations. Most of them are out there, they don't even know a conversation is going on. And if they know, they think it's about women and development. They don't think it's about them. And there are some who know and think that it's an evil, wicked thing that's happening. The problem is that, and unfortunately, historically, so much work has been done with women, and even the work that has been done with men has sometimes not been experienced as a positive, growth-filled, enlightening experience. When you talk to men who have been to workshops on gender, they usually tell you they've been preached at, punished, and blamed. They have not felt enhanced. They have not come out, and they certainly haven't felt that they should allow themselves to be vulnerable and open to anything. Rather, they end up closed and defensive. CariMAN, therefore, is about facilitating transformation. It's about trying to find ways in which men can be involved in this whole discussion about gender equality that's going to lead to social justice, but in a way that feels good, that feels affirming, doesn't feel blaming and cursing and challenging, that holds us accountable, but in a way that we will want to be accountable. We will want to be in that room, in that space. So what we want to do is to look at the beliefs and the norms. What exists? We want to look at the diversity, share new paradigms, teach new competencies, and hopefully create new relationships, both between men and women, and of course, the society in general. So it's a big mission. But we know that the more things change, and at my wedding to my lovely Trinidadian wife, our MC used a phrase. Yeah, you can clap her, that's wonderful. That was 20 years ago, and she's lovelier now. I'm getting good points, folks. The MC used a phrase, same old khaki pants. I'd never heard it before, but you must know it. You know I'm from Jamaica, right? No. So if there's anything I say you don't understand, you can ask me to repeat it. But however, here we go. Same old khaki pants. You know this phrase? Anybody seen it around? Name no products, name no companies, name no corporate entities. Can you read it with me? You really want nothing more blunt, blatant in your face than that, right? And it is there. And I pass it every day and I think, what is going on? Because this is like old-time thinking. This is what all this work in gender is supposed to have moved us beyond. And what is more interesting to me is that this came out of market research. Big market research. Is a big company. And a big advertising company proposed this, and big executives in a corporate entity approved it. And you buy the product. You buy the product. Actually, we buy the product. Because I do too. So it really brings us to the point of looking at what needs to change and how we need to go about doing it. Because that last little tagline they put in, which to me sounds like they were trying to appease people. Yes, men will rule, but we will do it responsibly. Because after all, we are men. We're not just men either, we're evolved men. So we rule, but responsibly. Rubbish. The point is that we need to understand this responsibility, that it's not anybody else's responsibility, it's our responsibility. It is our responsibility to understand that these messages, along with the many other messages that are out there, promote and build on a power imbalance that exists, that uses vulnerabilities in ways to benefit a few, that has existed for a long time, and though it is changing, still must transform some more. We need to get people involved in this conversation. We need to ensure that as men who have relatively recently become involved with this whole gender equality, social justice movement under that heading, that we're not just taking up space in this conversation. We're not just present as a token man. Oh, we have a man, it's Dr. Weller. And it did happen. I was an advisor on a gender committee 20 years ago, and when I asked the one beside me why there weren't more men, long table, Beverly man at that end, all women, me down here, and maybe one pastor over there. I asked the lady next to me why there weren't more men. She said, oh, we can't find any men. I said, but there are men all around. They're in all the positions of power. That's what you're talking about. Shouldn't they be here? A lady over here in the conversation turns to her friend and says, we can't let men in here. They'll mash up everything. We have to ensure that when we're in that space, we're making space. We're making space for more conversations, for more men to be involved, for more women to be involved, for more progress to be made. We have to add something. Women have worked in this field for many years. They've toiled in the vineyard. Our time is here now, and we've been doing some work, and there's some things we can begin to add to the conversation. But just to say that as a psychologist, any behavior change intervention, whether it's psychotherapy or at the social level, you heard before I used to be the psychologist with the AIDS program. We know that if you have to understand the cost-benefit ratio, what is it that people are going to get out of changing, and what are their fears? What are the costs? You have to understand that change is a process. It goes from awareness to sensitization to internalized relevance to trials, sustainability, and it's an ongoing process that has to be sustained. We learned that in AIDS. People didn't change their risk behavior automatically. We also learned, just as a quick point, that we have to be very careful about our communication because our messages can have corollary messages that have collateral damage. All the work we did to raise awareness of HIV and AIDS led to a fear of AIDS and a fear of people with AIDS. We then had to do work with stigma and discrimination to help those who lived with HIV and AIDS to manage and to help the communities to cope. What did that do? It took away the fear of AIDS. What's happening? People's risk behavior is going back up. We need to be very clear when we design interventions with men, with whoever, that we're using the evidence, the science, that we're not just intuitively trying a thing because we feel we should. We come out of a TED talk and say, yes, I'm going to do something. I'll invite that nice guy, Dr. Weller, to give a talk. Well, don't invite me to give a talk. Okay? Let us do a series of talks. Let us design a program. Don't do it so you feel good, which often some of us do. So we get back to our fellow. I know this is supposed to help, but it just doesn't feel right. Because, of course, a skin tone bandage has to be the right tone for the right skin. You don't think? Huh? As we try to design interventions, therefore, it's not as simple as saying, well, he needs a bandage. It has to feel right. It has to not create more harm along with the good. So let's talk about a few of the ideas that have come out of the work we've done with men. Some of the actions, the risk, the courage dimensions, and let's see how many we can fit in the time that's left. So, for example, we need to get all men involved. We mentioned all who would have been involved with that slogan, from the consumers, the advertisers, corporate. But this is challenging because engaging all men means that you have to understand the diversity of men. Engaging Trinidadian men does not mean the East-West corridor. No. You have an amazing diversity of groups here in Trinidad. And if you're going to engage men, it means you have to understand where all of these men are. We did a mapping study here, and there are an amazing number of groups who say they work with men. But do they talk to each other? Do they have any collaboration, any strategic interventions? Very few. Engaging men means you're going to have to go out there, talk to people who you don't understand, maybe don't agree with. You have to have the courage of this conviction to enter this field. It's not a dilettante kind of thing. Change doesn't take place in that regard. So we talk to men. We go out, we get the diversity across the region. CariMAN operates in 12 countries, mostly networking with existing organizations. And what we've found is that we really have to meet the men where they are. Now, again, it's not just a physical location of where they are. It's where their headspaces are, where their attitudes are, their beliefs, their whole feeling about what a man should be, what a woman should be, and how that varies from religion, ethnic group, age, stage, education. One size does not fit all. And it's some hard work because it means you have to wrap around all of these things and find ways to relate to all of these people, to engage them in this process. But when you do, it's fun. Men love these spaces that we create. They engage in discussions. They do things like hug up each other without feeling like anybody's going to call them a homosexual. They engage in interactions and share at a level that allows us to then move beyond that and begin to talk about their actual belief systems. Because it feels safe. It doesn't feel like they're being vulnerable. It allows them to look at that hierarchy of needs that was discussed earlier and engage in a process. But when you do that, then you really get some problems. Because guess what happens next? I'm going to tell you something, boy. Religion, sex, relationships. When the men start to, once they've gone through this great time of getting together, we're all guys, and we like this affiliation and bonding thing. But then you get this thing like, you do that? You think that is okay? And you begin to see where the diversity really comes about when the rubber hits the road. Everybody following me on this? You therefore end up having to help men deal with religious beliefs that are very deeply ingrained, that are part of their identity, attitudes towards sexuality, beliefs about relationships with men, with women, with their children, the roles they should play. And what we have discovered is that it is particularly challenging because for many men, once they get past the nice social networking part and they realize that there's really work to do, they start to look at you differently. So like, who sent you here? Is the woman? Is the gays? is what kind of ungodly arguments you're coming with about man should not be the head of the household. And then you, as a man trying yourself to be a recovering patriarch, trying yourself to move up that learning curve, you kind of feel away. You kind of want to say, well, maybe tomorrow I'll come back. But you have to stay the course because your vulnerability can only be worked through by doing the work. So I really commend all our partners, particularly most of the men in CariMAN, who are doing this kind of work because they don't come from an academic background. They're not trained, they don't have PhDs, they're regular men trying to do the work in their familiar spaces. So we developed a prototype because we said, rather than confront men's beliefs head on, let's try and find a way to help them find some common ground. And just to give you a quick example, one of the things we do, all the men are concerned about their youth. We begin to talk to them about what are the problems with the youth. The males are doing this, the teenage girls are doing that. We said, well, we're men, let's talk about the guys. What are some of the attitudes they have you want to change? How would you want to change them? To what? What kind of guys you want these fellas, what kind of men you want them to grow up to be? And just to cut this, because it's a short time, invariably, without ever once mentioning gender, patriarchy, gender roles, and of course all the other lovely words that some of these academics like to use, like discourse and humanistic, and you don't use those words. You just talk to men where they are. And what you find out is the characteristics that they find most disturbing about the young men are the ones that are typically what? Masculine. They're too rough, they're too indisciplined, they want everything right away, they think everything should be theirs. They need to be more disciplined, more focused, a little calmer, less promiscuous, so on and so on. And now you can talk about qualities and characteristics and interventions without ever having to challenge head-on some of the things that lead to resistance. Is everybody following me on this? We need to use these strategies. This is evidence-based. So, the problem is that for most men, and the reality is that gender equality is an emotion. Because we are privileged, we are powerful, we are patriarchs, we've been in charge, we run things. That's the rule responsibly. That's the word out there. And so it is really hard for us when we try to go to these men as messengers of this change process to help them to look beyond the immediate short-term loss to the long-term gain. The fact that if you are willing to talk about your problems, you may not have as much emotional problems. If you're willing to seek help, you can deal with your health. If you realize that driving fast on the highway is not going to make your penis grow. Right? But that's a hard sell because in the here and now, those behaviors are being reinforced by society, by the women in their lives, by their peers. And it is a very difficult thing, but we have to stay the course. It takes courage for these men to even engage in this discussion, and we have to have a parallel courage to stay with them and help them move through the process. A little puzzled some of the guys are. You see him scratching his head, because all of this stuff is new. A lot of it is very confusing. But we stay with them. And one of the biggest challenges we face, and where we really have to stand firm and kind of brace ourselves, is the backlash we get. Now, I'm going to be very careful about this. That opposition and backlash comes from many different directions. One of the main areas is men who strongly feel that we are taking away their manhood from them, that we are trying to promote all kinds of things that diminish men. And we try to keep our principled position and say, well, here's what we believe, but we are willing to talk to you. We are willing to engage with you because we all agree we want to get there. Huh? But boy, a colleague sent this poem. Man is the center, this is a paraphrase. Man is the center of humanity. Woman is an agent of the devil. Man is an at-risk minority. Now, this is what some men strongly believe in, folks. It's not politically correct to say these things. So they stay very much below the radar, except in their spaces. But this is a reality. But then working with women and the women who have worked in gender can present its own challenges too. Because even though we collaborate a lot to do work with, for example, prevention of gender-based violence, domestic violence, we're accused of consorting with the enemy. Why are you associating with these men who have these attitudes and beliefs? How can we trust you? As one woman, an esteemed colleague said, working with men on gender equality is a high-risk endeavor akin to walking on the verge of a precipice. We betray so easily, they say. Can they really trust us to hold the line when we are the ones who are benefiting in any way? So we keep trying, we keep bonding. Even though, as one person compared us to white supremacists, women who were compared to black South Africans have to work very carefully with. And then the men on the other side are calling us panty men. Because we're not real men, otherwise we wouldn't be talking this kind of stuff. So it takes a lot of work, and we have found that it also takes courage to not only stick to it, but to advocate for this kind of work. Because for many people, the idea of putting resources into working with men is anathema. It's consorting with the enemy. So many women need the help, need the support. That is where it needs to go. But we stand firm. We keep advocating. We need the resource. Bird can't fly on one wing is what we say in Jamaica. It's not just the human potential. We need the money to pay for the training, the traveling, the resource material. So, as recovering patriarchs, we know no man is an island, no man stands alone, kind of a cliche, but it's true. We know the power of affiliation. We know the power of men working together. We know that it can be used for harm. We know it can be used for good. We're trying to create the space for the good. So the ties that bind do not gag. We can be together and still speak truth, be authentic, agree to disagree, try to help each other move up the learning curve. We are calling ourselves champions for change. And it is amazing how our network has been strengthened by the opportunities to just be together and work through these issues. And we would like to have that happen in a multiplier effect across the region. So there are some of the fellas and some of the women we partner with in Dominica at a recent review. Wonderful vibes. Diverse, all kind of beliefs and backgrounds, but all trying to find a way to make things better, to create that vision that we want to achieve. So it all comes back to you, folks. We are trying to change a conversation that does not only take place at the gender table. It takes place in our daily lives. It takes place in our faith-based organizations, our workplaces, our communities. The challenge, therefore, is to what extent can you engage with this conversation, perhaps initiate interventions. As one partner said at the beginning, he felt so weird, like he was standing up in his island, waving his hand, and everybody was looking at him like, what's wrong with you? But sometimes change has to start with one individual playing that role, having the courage in a small space, in a large space, to say, yes, this is something we need to look at. And for men, it is all the more important, because we do need to partner with women to create this objective. We can't just take up space, folks. We have a choice. You have choices. A lot of the presentations today have talked and set the stage for action. And here is an example of the kind of action that you can take. Find a space, get a discussion going, but remember it's a process. Remember that it requires competencies to do it, and remember that CariMAN is available to help. We're good guys. Thank you.